Kia ora, everyone. Welcome to episode 5 of Real Talk Mental Health Sounds Like This. I am your co-host, Arawinia, and we also got the wonderful Emma G today. Now, you might notice something a little bit different. Emma and I are here on our own, and today we're going to chat a little bit more about why we created Real Talk, the kaupapa, which is like, if you're not from New Zealand, like, you know, what we're all about and kind of what the intention and the purpose of Real Talk really is, not only for us, but for everyone else involved. And so I'm really excited to chat more about this. Emma and I had a quick little discussion about this prior, as well as had this incredible conversation yesterday. And this is what really inspired me to kind of bring us on this journey today. So hello, Emma, welcome.
Hello, my sister from another mister.
Where are you today? Can you tell everyone where you are today? Because we've
Yeah,
got a different
so
background.
it's a very different background. I am currently in upstate New York, a couple of hours away from Connecticut, working with journalists from a well-reputed news agency here in the States on a stress management workshop as part of a HEFAT training, which is a hostile environment and first aid training week that they undergo for, journalists and people who work in journalism that are potentially working in high conflict areas, war zones, political landscapes that are a little bit uneasy, if you know what I'm talking about. And and just giving them some tools to help navigate their work, which is obviously what we're all about. It's about real talk. It's about, managing mental health, managing physical health, managing emotional health, and recognizing that they all intertwine. Obviously, well, not obviously, actually, because I feel like a lot of people don't really actually understand how imperative it is to look after our mental health because of the impact that it actually does have on our emotional, physical, spiritual, and social well-being, So I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, I really love that you said like how a lot of people actually don't realize like the interconnection and like how each thing like impacts each other, because I think that there is like this misconception, right? Like if you just like focus on, like, for most people it's their physical health, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what I noticed being like a CrossFit coach from New Zealand. Like a lot of people tend to focus on that alone, forgetting that really it's like the interconnection, like, of all those. I think you mentioned 5 things, which I love, because that's like from the Te Ao Māori model of health, which for those of you that don't know is Te Wharitapa Whā, which was created by Dr. Mason Jury. And like that's kind of like how I see health and well-being, is kind of through that lens and through that model.
Yeah, it's through Te Wharitapa Whā that I got my teaching qualifications, so as much as with your CrossFit coaching, that those 5 principles really tie into your work. As an educator, as an empowerment coach, I do exactly the same thing. We need to be able to maintain and feed all 5 facets of self in order for us to actually come out of whatever it is that we're working on whole and healthy. I was delivering my stress management workshop today and telling, the participants that, and I say this because kind of hesitantly, because I feel like it's obvious, but for many people, we don't understand how much of an impact stress has on our bodies. It lives in us. And so the more we hold on to it, the more negatively it affects our immediate health, obviously, because nobody likes to be stressed and, go home and blow up at our kids or our husband or whatever. But also, the long-term effects. Stress manifests as cardiovascular illness. It manifests as, it lends itself to diabetes even. There's a whole host of illnesses that come as a direct response to how we manage our stress. So being able to really look at the whole of a person's health as opposed to focusing just on one aspect, I think is imperative.
Yeah, totally. Because I think, as you're talking about like stress, right, and it being like a whole person, like a lot of people, like I'm sure with like what you're delivering, they're looking at it through the lens specifically of like workplace stress, right? Like the stress that comes from being in that specific workplace, not recognizing that there are so many other types of stresses that can contribute to like our overall level of stress and actually how we're experiencing things, and actually what are the choices that we're making that either kind of give us energy or perhaps like drain us, or that like mitigate the stress that we're actually navigating, or even ideally eliminating it. Because like I know for myself, like I think back to prior, like before I started coaching, like a lot of the stress that I was experiencing came as a result of like the choices that I was making. So like for me, it was like you're laughing. It was like staying in a role and working for an organization where my work wasn't valued. I wasn't being seen. I wasn't being recognized. And so that like added to like the overall stress I was experiencing. I was also in a very unhealthy relationship that I kept choosing to be in, which was adding to the overall stress that I was experiencing. And so it was like those choices that I was making, right? Like they were the things that like I had power and control over. And there are so many people, I'm sure you can like elaborate on it more, like that don't necessarily think that they have power and control over the stress that they're experiencing in their life.
Yeah, I'm please excuse my smiling and grinning and laughing a little bit because I was literally just saying, half an hour ago, emotion is just energy in motion. What we choose to do with that energy is completely our choice, to your point. And so, for many of us, creatives especially, especially for journalists, right? We find ourselves in these high intensity circumstances, and then we do the work, we get that hit of dopamine, and then we become addicted to that dopamine, and that just kind of replicates, reproduces, as we try to keep chasing that story. Myself, as a singer songwriter, very similar to you, found myself in toxic relationship after toxic relationship, and I didn't conceptualize at the time that I was actively choosing that energy. The emotion is just energy in motion, in a way that um, I would find myself in these horrific situations so that I could write dope music.
Oh my gosh,
you
this
know,
is so bad. I shouldn't be
no,
laughing,
but
but
like
I get it.
literally, and I actually literally wrote a song about it called Chasing Love Songs. That was like my heart moment, like, oh crap, I'm choosing this because I'm not chasing the healthiness. I'm not chasing the healthy relationship. I'm not even chasing, I don't know what I was chasing, but I can tell you I was chasing a good song, you know, and how horrific. I'm so sorry. Goodbye. Don't call me, I'll
Yeah.
call you. But you know what I mean? It's that whole emotion is just energy in motion. So what you choose to do with that emotion and that energy is literally up to you. And so, I'm talking to these people today about, our ability to cognitively reframe, and how to learn how to think of negative situations as more empowering situations, or ways that we can turn that energy into physical activity. For you it's CrossFit. It was CrossFit for me for a long time. It then turned into bodybuilding. My husband and I ran a Krav Maga self-defense school, so our slogan is literally come here, hit things, feel better. That's just energy and motion, right?
Yeah.
And but it could be writing a song, it could be writing a book of poems, or it could be
Mm.
whatever it is. But recognizing that we do have power over that. I don't think we give ourselves enough grace or permission.
Mm. And I think that addiction to stress, or that constantly seeking that dopamine hit, right? Like that is a very real thing, like especially
Mm-hmm.
in large cities like the one that you're in, right, in New York, even where you're from, like in the US, like there is this belief that if I perform, then I will be worthy of love and praise, versus kind
Mm,
of being able to see yourself as inherently worthy just as you are,
yeah,
without needing to do anything and without needing to prove anything. And interestingly, like this is a big part of like the work that I do with people who are in leadership positions,
of
because
course.
a lot of the people that I work with, high performers, highly ambitious, and have lived on this cycle and this treadmill of doing like for so long, right? And they've gotten so much praise from performing. And so it's then become this like identity. It's like, well, who am I if I am not performing at this high level? And
Mm,
what I notice in a lot of the people that I work with, they're actually really terrified to slow down and to stop and be still. Because what happens then? Like, what
yep.
happens if I am no longer the CEO? What happens if I am no longer the coach? What happens if I'm no longer this thing that has given me so much self-worth? But really, what you've done is like you've just really become, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like addicted to people perceiving you and seeing you a certain way. And that can be like a really scary thing. Like if that gets like swept out from under you. And I see this happen a lot in a lot of the athletes that I've worked with. And I've seen this happen a lot, even with people like losing their jobs, right? Like when you get sick, as an example, and you can no longer perform as an elite athlete, like you get an injury. I see people
Mm,
go through the darkest night of the soul. And then
of course.
similarly too, like with people who are leaders, and say for example, like maybe they get fired, or maybe something happens, right? Like it's like they completely lose who they are,
Yeah.
and like just have no idea what to do.
They have to have a Mufasa moment.
And
Completely.
that's the moment. Do you know what? I'm laughing and I don't even know what that means, I'm being
Oh,
honest.
from the Lion King.
Well,
Yeah,
like
I
I
don't know
know
who
the
I am.
Lion
Right.
King, but I'm
Yeah.
like,
When he's like, I'm your father. You are my son. You were rightfully okay. Anyways, I am intrigued by your comment about the big city high achievers, because I feel as if identity is linked so much so to our careers and our doing, regardless of whether we're from a big city or not. Like, you and I both grew up in Hamilton, and I definitely felt a tie from a very early age to who I was, being what I did. I've been singing my entire life. I recorded and released my first song when I was 10, and so all throughout my life, I've always been the creator, the performer, the teacher, the entrepreneur, the whatever, that I didn't know for the longest time who I was. In fact, it wasn't until I met my husband that he finally gave me permission to like figure out who's Emma as opposed to who's Emma G, right?
mm,
And I think that's a huge point that you raise, because so many people worldwide, well, I should say predominantly, I think in Western culture, tie their identity to what they do, and the accolades and the letters after their name, and you know the ranking that they may have, even to being a mother or a father. Who are you outside of those boundaries? I think it's a really interesting topic, and one that is really important to talk about, because once that does, once your child leaves home, or once you do lose the job, or once you go, you've reached the glass ceiling, now what? That you kind of are faced with this, okay, Mufasa, who am I?
Yeah, I mean, right, it does affect so many people, right? And I love how
Mm.
you talk about it, like, being a mother and all these different identities. And like simply put, like it's a way that we can almost like categorize ourselves, right? And so the way that we can make meaning from like a belonging point of view, like typically,
Mm.
like that's why most people like create these like identities for themselves. And one of the biggest things I've like had to learn is like, is that identity helpful or is it like harmful? And I even kind of talk about this like with my clients. It's like, okay, cool. Like, does this identity really help you in terms of like, your self-worth, like how you see yourself, how you present yourself to the world? Or is it actually like harming you in terms of like how you're thinking and the way that you're being? And like what I mean by that is like sometimes it's like actually, I no longer identify with this specific identity that I've created for
Mm.
myself. And one of the things, and this is something that I'm so grateful for in my own personal journey, is like God has really like humbled me a lot when it comes to many of the different identities that I have become addicted to
Mm.
over the
Mm.
years. And like essentially is like pulled that thing away from me so that I could learn to see myself as I am, as Rawinia,
Mm-hmm.
without being called, for me, some of the identities that I've had is like the CrossFit coach. Oh yeah, she's the CrossFit girl. Or like when I
Right.
used to work, or when I used to work for Lululemon, which is like a global activewear brand. Like a lot of people knew me as the Lululemon girl. And so like all these different identities that I became, you know, really accustomed to being seen as, like it was really challenging for me when I grew to let go of them. And I think that's the thing that a lot of the people that I work with most struggle with. It's like, okay, actually, I'm no longer feeling fulfilled in this role,
Mm.
or I'm
Mm.
no longer feeling fulfilled in this identity. And I've really lost like my spark, or I've lost like that thing that kind of pulls me forward. But I'm really afraid to let go of this identity because I've invested so much time and space into it. And that's typically like what I notice in a lot of the people that I work with. It's like actually like, well, what happens if it's like that fear of the unknown, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I love the unknown now. I think I laugh because I'm like, I am really calm in the chaos.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I'm calm in the chaos is because I have God. And I would have been previously like super anxious, super worried about all of that stuff. But now I'm just like, okay, cool. Like, if that's not meant to happen, God's got me. I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have the skills and the tools to be able to support myself through any change and transition, such
Mm-hmm.
as like if we're going back to like what you were talking about earlier, like emotions, like energy and motion, like how do I direct any unhelpful emotions that I'm experiencing into something that is helpful, such as like going to the gym and
Yeah.
or like going for a run, or
Yeah.
even like writing a post for social media, or writing my book. Like what are the things that are going to be helpful in those moments that I'm feeling perhaps a little bit wobbly?
You have sparked a number of ideas in my head and thoughts in my head. The first thing that you made mention of about the identity reframe, when I was doing or preparing for my first TED talk back in 2021, one of the things that I found really difficult to do was focus on one topic, because every, first of all, I don't see life like a book. I see life like an album, right? No album is the same song repeated over and over again. nor is a good album repetitive of the same topic. You have different keys, you have different tempos, you have different subject matter, you have, a good album kind of is rather diverse in my way of thinking. And so in my life, I kind of try to do the same thing, is recognize I have the musician me, I have the empowerment through songwriting coach me, I have the stress management coach me, I have the youth empowerment coach me, I have the teacher me, like the wife me, like all of these different facets. Yet when you're doing a TED talk and preparing for a TED talk, you can only make one point. There's only one identity that you can kind of cling to, and that kind of becomes your entire public face, right? And that kind of always both intrigued me and frustrated me, because I just feel like you're doing yourself such a disservice by ignoring, and to talk about, our conversation last night, the gifts that God gives us. We need to use those gifts so that we can get more, and so that we can become more, and so that we can evolve as human beings, and broaden our horizons and become the best versions of ourselves. And I think, the more you zone in on one aspect of yourself, cool, but recognize that the wind of that door opening also opens another door, and you should go into that door as well and explore more about who you can become, and recognize that you're powerful because of all that you are, not just because of the one narrative that you've married yourself to. Because at least with the clients that I work with, and in my own experience, by ignoring the multifacetedness of ourselves, that can contribute to so much anxiety, so much stress, so almost contempt, so much contempt, for people not understanding your true self, because you're ignoring so much of yourself and hiding so much of yourself. I think, there's so much value in just showing up wholeheartedly, fully, unapologetically, being like, this is me, let me sing you my songs, baby. Bring it on, world,
Yeah. I really love that you brought this up, because I think this is something, I love how you use the word intrigued, because like I would get highly frustrated with these types of experiences and scenarios, because I'd be like, but no, I'm not just this one thing. I'm like all these things, right? I'm an auntie, I'm a sister, I am Maori as well, like as an identity, like I'm all these things. I'm a leadership coach, an authenticity coach, an author, like, a friend, like I'm all these things. And you cannot put me in just like this one box. Like,
Amen.
If you try to, then like what you're doing is you're really distilling like the true essence of like who I am. And it's not like the whole truth, right? Like you're not actually seeing the full spectrum of who I am and what it means to kind of be in my presence and, and share the gifts, right, that God has given me and you. And I think a lot of people do themselves a disservice. And what I notice in like a lot of the clients that I work with who are like in the corporate space, like leadership clients, right? Like there is this narrative that you have to leave like, your personal life at home, and you've got to leave yourself, you've only got to show up as like this corporate version of you. And that's really hard to do, especially if you're going through a really challenging kind of part of your relationship at the time, or perhaps, even like someone in your family is sick, and it doesn't really kind of take into like, that full spectrum of what it means to be a human. And that part also contributing to then how you show up as a leader at work, because it's all interconnected, like as you were saying earlier, right? Like, how I experience my relationships and my health and all of that, like it's all interconnected. And I think that there, if we're kind of going back to like what you were talking about earlier around like mental health, like how we like see and experience and perceive things and our ability to like reframe things really just has such an impact on how we experience life in general. And so like the skills that you're sharing and that you're teaching, like only good can come from that, really.
I
Especially
hope so.
given you hope so. I'm like, well, especially given, and this is why I do the work that I do, right, is like there is a lot of pessimism, there's a lot of like criticism out in the world. Like, if you look at social media, like not always, but like a large majority of it is people being quite critical and trolling other people, or people, like complaining about their lives, right? Versus, okay, how can we look to reframe the challenges that we're going through and seeing it as an opportunity for me to be able to learn, or seeing it as an opportunity for me to grow, or however you're choosing to reframe it in a way whereby it's going to help you in your journey and kind of give you your power back, right? Versus giving your power away to something and like something external to you, because we have so much more control over the outcomes in our life than we think that we do.
Yeah. It's I love that you talk about that with regard to like how, seeing how we can grow and learn from it. One thing I mentioned in my book, that's coming out soon. I'm so excited. Is not just looking at it as how does this help me learn and grow, but also how does this help me to connect? Because the more we can sort of lean into those difficult spaces or those challenges that we have or those sticky points in our life, I think we're also able to then help others connect with us and recognize that, oh shoot, we actually experience the same things. We don't need to yuck each other's yums in order to feel superior. We can meet each other's yuck at the same time and be like, okay, how can we grow this? How can we turn this into fertilizer and grow from it together? I think is a really beautiful opportunity. And the reason why I'm bringing that up specifically is, you identify one of the first things that you mentioned just now about who you are beyond the CrossFit coach, beyond the leadership and authenticity coach, is that you're Maori. Now, I am coming up to my 10-year anniversary of living in the States, coming up this Monday. And that is quite pivotal for me because having grown up in New Zealand, where there is such an emphasis on the pepeha, and for those who don't know what a pepeha is, it's introducing yourselves as your name is the last thing that is relevant to your identity, right? It's you talk about the waka that your family arrived to the country on. You discuss the mountain you grew up next to, the river and the ocean that flows through your veins, the marae or church or meeting place that your family go to, who your grandparents are, who your parents are, who you are is the last bit of the puzzle. When I first moved to America, and still to this day, I will constantly ask people, where are you from? And I tell you, Ra, the number of people who have accused me of being racist for asking people where they're from is shocking. Now, yes, you find that shocking, but because there's so much marriage to one line of identity here, it's almost like you're trying, there's this idea, I think, that people kind of like, oh, where are you from? How are we different? Whereas, myself being from New Zealand with Iranian, Norwegian, American, Fijian ancestry, with family in Iowa, family in Los Angeles, family in Pennsylvania, New York, for me, it's about connection. It's about, okay, is our waka the same? Is our mountain the same? How can I identify with you? How can I relate to you? And I think, again, so the 5 facets of self, social being one of them, being able to find that community, find that connection, find that aroha, has been really beautiful in my journey when I'm navigating life as a musician, touring through Mississippi and Arkansas, as well as New York and LA, but also as a coach, so that my clients can feel like they have some kind of connection to me, even if they're based in. I've got one client based in Tennessee. You know, she's 17 years old and, very, very different life to what I have. But we've still got some connection there because there's some assimilation in experiences or in backgrounds or in culture or in identity or in struggle, you know what I mean? And so I don't know, I just you made me reflect on that, as like that's something that I think is one of the beautiful things of coaching from the perspective of the New Zealand culture, Maori culture, Pacifica culture, especially in Canada where you are, and in the States where I am. It's intriguing.
I'm smiling because I'm like, here I am shocked, but then also I actually had an experience when I was in London and England, and I did ask someone, I was like, where are you from? And she did take it very personally and thought it was very offensive. And so I sat and I wanted to ask her like her experience and like, like why she thought that way, and then kind of explained, how I saw things. And, again, like I really love how you talk about like it's an ability to connect with people, right? Because in that moment, like it just got me curious about her way of thinking and like why she thought the way that she did, and me getting to kind of share, why I think I the way that I do. And, I think if we go back to like the identity piece, right? I know for me, like knowing who I am and where I'm from and kind of like what you were talking about, right? Like it really gives me so much, like in Maori, we use the word like mana. And it's just like this deep certainty of who I am, where I'm from, and why I'm here. And being able to kind of connect back to the Indigenous parts of me and even the colonized parts of me, because I am also Pākehā or like English and Scottish. But, what I love about it is like that ability to connect, right? Like when I was in England, I got really curious about my Scottish heritage, kind of like dove deeper into that. And I was like, like that's why I am the way that I am. Like I am a really fiery person, and like that comes out in the Maori part of me. But then when I did more research into the Scots, I was like, oh yeah, like they're like warrior people. They're badass. Yep. Of course I get angry all the fucking time and I'm really righteous and I'm like really justice oriented, and it just made so much more sense. And I'm like, got it, cool.
Yeah. It's funny,
and it just really helped me to like, if we're going back to like, I mean, the title of this is like all about shame, right? Like I used to feel so ashamed that I would get quite angry quite easily. But what I've realized like over the years is that actually like what it's showing me is like the things that I'm really passionate about and the things that I really want to create change on. And it's not that anger is bad or wrong. It's actually like how we choose to respond to it instead of react, right? And how do we respond to it in really healthy ways? In like, such as like Krav Maga, like, or CrossFit, or write a song.
Fight that song.
Yeah. But honestly, I think you and I could like chat about these things forever. And I think that's the thing that I most love about you and I is like just that ability to be real with each other, right? Like even yesterday, like, we had a chat and I said to you, like I'm going through a shame spiral right now, and told you that I was experiencing shame. And just talking to you about it is something that I was like, cool, okay, I feel good now. Like, I'm like, just kind of bringing that what felt really heavy and dark to the light. Like sometimes that's all you need to do.
Yep.
And, that's like a big part of the reason why we're creating this space, or why we've created this space, right, is that everyone experiences to some extent and to some degree, right? Like these thoughts that perhaps, feel like, they're holding you back, and perhaps actually are holding you back. And, we want to be able to, one, just normalize it and just like remind you that you're not alone, which is also the title of my book, by the way.
Love it. It's on my bookshelf, not going to lie.
Yeah. And just to know, like, this is kind of part of the human experience, and actually, like, how can we help you navigate through that part, right? Like, because we all experience ups and downs, and so, actually, how can we support you to navigate that and wade through that?
Of course. Yeah. And of course, again, we could talk about this for hours, but we do have to go. But if this hits home for you and you want to share your stories with us, please reach out. All our details are in the caption of this video. And, again, to echo your words, Ra, you are not alone. We are all in this together, whether it's, showing that connectedness through story, through history, through culture, through, experiences, through drawing the roadmap for your future. We're here to support you. We're here to help you navigate your future with power, dignity, and love. And on that note, until next week, friends, be good, be kind, spread love like it's going out of fashion, and we'll see you next time.